YouTube? Got the Honda out here today, getting it ready for Deep Creek this weekend. Test this snorkel out, courtesy of 2 tall snorkels. Hit him up. The only thing is, this boot's been busted for a while on this front axle. Let me push it back some. As you can see, and pretty much all the grease is gone out of there, and these boots are dry rotted. Pretty sure they're the factory axles on this thing. Starting to get a little play in it a little bit. This one's okay. I mean, looks old, looks horrible, but it's okay. We're going to replace this one, and I'll go show you what we're going to replace it with. I'm going to replace it with an Eastlake axle. So I know it's a cheap axle, yada yada yada. I know the Can-Am guys kind of hate these axles because they break often, but apparently the Honda guys really like them. So I'm going to see how they work out on the 300, and I'll let you guys know. This is not a sponsored video by Eastlake. I wish it was, but it's not. So I'll test it out on the 300. I mean, it's not a lot of horsepower. It's got some super light 28-inch tires, no gear reduction, no axle paddle, no torque blocker or anything. So it should be a good test. So I got the axle box. Go ahead and cut it open. And I went ahead and ordered both front axles just in case. It's nice to have a spare. Gotta figure out which one's which though. Okay, we got a number on this side. They sent me off. See, the axle starting at $74.99. Interesting. But yeah, we'll see how these axles do. Alright, and we got these 2 axle numbers. I got to figure out which is which. Actually, they have the same part number. So, so this is what the axle looks like. Comes in a packaging just like this. It's got the part number on it. It looks nice. Not gonna lie. Pretty heavy duty looking. Can move it with my hands. Pretty easy. I don't like the way that sounds, but you hear that? Anywho, looks decent. Will it last? We'll find out. So that's what the axle looks like. The first thing you want to do is go ahead and loosen up the lug nuts on the 4-wheeler. For this particular 4-wheeler and lug nuts, these are 14 millimeters. So you go ahead and get that. That way when you jack it up to take it all the way off, you won't struggle with the tire spinning. Sometimes that happens. So go ahead and get your 14 millimeter. Break it loose. And then keep that, and we'll go to the next step. Your next step is to get your jack and go ahead and place it in the middle on the frame of the ATV. So when you jack it up, you're on a good point, and it's not like the A-arm, so it's going to flex. Always make sure you're on the frame. I put these boards on there because my jack's too short after the lift kit and tires. And go ahead and pretty much jack it up. And you want the tire just to come off the ground. You don't want too much after that. And this is exactly what I want. So I can take this tire and wheel off. So after you've jacked it up, you want to go ahead and get your 14 millimeter again and finish taking these lug nuts off the ATV. Go ahead and take this off and wheel it out the way. Your next step is taking this cotter pin out. Remember we bent the ends on this when we installed the disc brakes, so we got to bend these back first, and then we'll pull it out. Okay. Take that out, put that down. Be careful where you put it, because sometimes you lose those things. All right, I got this 7/8 to fit it, which this came off pretty good. And take that off. It's very greasy because I put marine grease on it. This hub will come off, but we got to take the brake caliper off, the bolt in the back. To take the brake caliper off, we're going to have to take this bolt off up here, and there's one down here, and they are both 13 millimeters. So go ahead and get your socket and take those off. Same thing with the bottom bolt. Put that in safe place so you don't lose it. Take this brake caliper off, and I like to prop it against the A-arm so it's not dangling by the hose, because you don't want that to mess up. Pull this right on out. There's our nice hub. Make sure you don't get grease spots on it like that. I'm gonna have to wipe that off because you're not gonna be able to stop as good. And the Super ATV brake disc conversion kit, they work great. Highly recommend it to any Honda 300 owner. So our next thing to do is pull the cotter pin out of this ball joint at the bottom, because we're gonna have to pull these ball joints out. I should have ordered ball joints too, because they're busted and not in the best condition. Did not pay attention to that though, so I'm gonna have to redo these steps. Pull your cotter pin out. Put it in. I got a 17 to fit it, so this might be a little tough to break loosey. I'm gonna have to get a cheater bar for that. Yeah, definitely had to use my cheater bar to break it loose. And if you're wondering, this is my cheater bar. Once you break it loose, take the bolt off the bottom of the ball joint. It's very rusty. Socket's full of rust. Take that off, put it up. You can. Some people will beat on this A-arm to push it down, or get a pry bar and push it out to push the ball joint out. You can pick these up pretty cheap in Harbor Freight. They're super helpful if you plan on working on stuff yourself. It's a ball joint separator. Basically, you just slide it in. You slide it in the ball joint itself. Like that split will go between the ball joint. Let me undo this. And that metal piece at the bottom will go on the bottom of the bolt. Slide it in all the way, and then just tighten it up. And with your hand, and then you get your socket that'll fit that. This 3/4 fits it, and just tighten it up, and it will push the ball joint out without you having to beat on it or pry on it, just like that. Definitely worth its weight in money. I didn't spend 10 minutes beating on it. It just literally popped right out like that. So we did that. Now we've got to unloosen our shock mount. And the reason we unloosen our shock mount is so we can get this to come up. Because right now the shock's pushing it the A-arm all the way down, and we can't move it up. Not by hand at least. So we take the shock mount, this bolt out, swing the shock up, and we can move the A-arm up. So you get you a 14 millimeter. You can use the ratchet, 2 ratchets, or a wrench, whichever you prefer, and undo this shock mount bolt. Tap this out. Have to get that. And see, you swing the shock up, put this bolt down so you don't lose it, and you can move this. So you're gonna push this up. Make sure that's fully separated. Push your axle right on out. Oh God, this is super greasy. And there's your axle. And there's your grease. Lovely. Sometimes you can't pull this out. I usually get a pry bar to get these out. This is what I typically use to pop CV axles out of diffs. It usually works great. You can get these at Walmart or Harbor Freight, wherever, Lowe's. And I usually get it in between, in between the axle and the diff and pry it open. This one's kind of giving me a little bit of trouble. I might have to get a hammer and tap it in for a little bit to wedge it in there. I'll be back. I pretty much put it in here and just popped it right on out. Didn't get that on camera. But pull this up, this axle comes out. This is probably a factory axle, honestly. It just looks horrible. Super dry, boots are dry rotted. This one's gone. I mean, it pulls, but I'm pretty sure there's no grease in there, or little to none. We'll do a comparison. So factory on the left, I'm assuming factory at least, and then Eastlake on the right. Besides being newer, I think honestly the Eastlake is almost the same in diameter. Maybe a little thicker, but I'm not quite sure if it's because of the coating or not. Maybe a little bit thicker, I'll give them that. Everything else looks good though. It was pretty sturdy, looks pretty sturdy. Hope it works great, turns out great. The Honda guys seem to love them. Can-Am guys don't hold up so well. We'll see how it does in the Honda 300. So you can see how rusty it is in there. It's ridiculous, honestly. It's crazy. Anywho, got our factory sized length axle in here. You want the splines to match up, and then push it in. Might be a little tricky at first, but I've braced the top A-arm up with my cheater bar just so I can get out of the way. Kind of does not want to go in there. I had to play around with this axle a little bit because the C-clip on the end kept playing around and wouldn't go in. So I just ended up putting the nut on this end and just making sure the axle was straight, and then just tapping on it with the hammer just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. So take your new castle nut off, drop this A-arm, put your new axle through, basically pick this A-arm all the way up, slide this new axle in it, put your ball joint back into the bottom of the A-arm, and this ball joint's completely gone. There's no saving that. Remember to put this ball joint nut back on. Ball joints are absolutely shot, but they will get replaced after this ride. I didn't realize they were this far gone. This is going to go, our rotor's going to go back on our axle. Make sure the splines line up. Slide it on there. You get your new castle nut, put it on the axle. Tighten it all the way up. This also came with a new Carter pin too. That is a 7/8. So tighten that up. They don't have any instructions or torque specs in the box for these axles. So I'm just going to tighten them up so I can put the carter pin through right here, this hole. This hole is going to keep it tight. This is the new carter pin that they send. You can see this thing's pretty long. We put it in here. I might have to use the hammer and tap this in some. Just tap it in. There we go. Pull it all the way down. We're gonna have plenty left over from this one. And I always bend one way and then bend the other way. And you want it to pretty much just wrap around that nut. Oop. We're going to grab our brake caliper. Remember, it goes on like this. So remember to put the brake pads on each side. Grab our 2 bolts that hold this caliper on. Bolt it right back up. I always recommend hand tightening both of them and then torquing them down. That way, if you need to adjust or move it slightly over and they're not bolted all the way down, and you have to undo them. Once you get those started, remember they're 14 millimeters. Grab your 14 millimeter and go ahead and torque those down once you've got them started. Just take the extension off for that one. There we go. Next thing is put your shock back down. Mount it back up. This might take a little bit of persuasion if you have rancher shocks like I do. There we go. Put your nut back on it and tighten it up. Remember, these are 14 millimeters. Put your 14 back on. So how the axle handle still in there kicking. I don't think there's any play in there, and I mean, I was not easy on the Honda this weekend. So definitely think it's worth it, at least on the Honda. It's held up pretty good. I mean, of course, this isn't a crazy setup, just some 28-inch Zillas and some rancher shocks, but it's holding up pretty fine.